exchange right here on New Era TT Radio, what we call net radio. So get caught up in the net. All right, this is where we hook up with our journalist extraordinaire, Mr. Tony Fraser. Tony, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Sir Charles, and all our listeners. Wonderful to be here this afternoon. A good choice of calypso there, Charlo.
I try my best.
Before you go and run away, he has, I think he has resigned, whichever is the appropriate one. The PNM is having its General Council meeting this afternoon.
Right.
With its General Council or Executive, whatever it is. And I'm sure there will be some interesting things coming out of that. Right, Charlo?
I'm sure we'll have enough news for in the morning.
Yes, absolutely. And tomorrow too, I think it's the afternoon, I'm not too sure of the time just yet, the new Prime Minister, the Prime Minister-elect for the moment, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, as the political leader of the United National Congress, will be sworn in, is scheduled to be sworn in at President's House by the President, and we expect too that her choice of Attorney General will also, he or she
yes.
will also be sworn in. As is well known, Charlo, by you and everyone else, that what is required for a government, the minimum is really a Prime Minister and an Attorney General. So the two will be sworn in tomorrow. Presumably, I don't think that the Prime Minister-elect will swear in or have herself sworn in without an Attorney General. So by tomorrow afternoon, we should know those stories. And here on the afternoon drive, we shall assemble some people to talk about it. I don't know how much we'll have to talk about between the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. That particular choice should be interesting. There is no obvious individual for the job amongst those who have been elected, so that somebody from the outside may be chosen.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Aspirations. We talked yesterday, some of the panelists may have thought that former PNM Attorney General John Jeremy, who we know appeared on the platform of the UNC during the campaign on a couple of occasions, may very well be a candidate. I'm not too sure about that. If he becomes the Attorney General, I think he will be the first Attorney General who has served in such a position on both sides of the political fence. So that will be very interesting for tomorrow afternoon. Yes?
Very, very interesting, you know. Yeah. But I looked at him, and you know, I'm wondering, you know, if he is ready to go back into that kind of active life and politics, because you know he didn't look too as I say in Trinidad, wholesome, you know. Yeah.
You know, it's difficult for politicians to walk away. You know,
oh my word!
There's a kind of magic that holds them.
Yes.
So, up to earlier today, I was talking about the one individual that I know of, who, when he was voted out of office, he turned his back, cleared the Prime Minister's residence, and no one ever saw him in public, in any public function again. His name, George Michael Chambers. Who whatever you said about Georgie, as people were calling him, the office obviously did not hold great attraction to him after he was voted out of office. He disappeared into the sunset, never again to appear in any public kind of forum. You know, Chalo, even his funeral, his family refused anything like a state funeral for him.
Yeah.
He was finished with that, and he left town.
Right.
Not to be seen again.
Yeah. So that was I suppose, you know, a quiet individual. More to himself. One makes you wonder what kind of push you will have to push and convince him to probably even go there in the first place, because it was a difficult time,
Yeah, but I suppose in his youth he was a different person, and what transpired too in 1986 was a really damning blow to him and the PNM. The first time they were voted out of office, and in such a manner, 33-3, that he thought, well, look, people have said what they have to say, and it's time for me to leave town and leave the party up to those aspirants,
Yeah.
notably Patrick Manning, who was the least favored amongst those to take over the job as prime minister. He got the job, he took the job, and as leader of the opposition, and finally served two or three terms as prime minister. A significant achievement.
Very much so.
So we go into today's program, and today's program consists of two parts. We're going to have the chairman of the CARICOM Observer Mission to our elections, and then we're going to have the chairman of the Commonwealth Observer Mission to the Trinidad and Tobago elections. I interviewed them both yesterday at the Hilton at their news conference, and we didn't get everything into the interview, but what they both said, their findings were, and you're going to hear them talk about it in a moment, their findings were that not only did the EBC do an excellent job of administering the election, that they found no real problem that existed with voters getting to, you know, exert their franchise on election day. So the first person we're going to go to is the chairman of the CARICOM Commission, and he's Ian Hughes. He's an Antiguan, and he was the chairman of that commission, and I asked him a few questions about, what his election commission found outside there. So let's go to that interview with Ian Hughes.
About concerns that we won that we should be able to govern ourselves in the sense of establishing and monitoring our elections without outside interference. And contrary to that is the issues that we don't have sufficient confidence in ourselves. How important it is for international observers to be in Trinidad and Tobago and indeed elsewhere to ensure and perhaps give a passing mark to our conduct of elections.
Right. One of the things we have to remember is that we all came from the same system, originate from the same system in terms of electoral processes, the Westminster system. And so we all operate within that system. And so one of the things I've also observed over the years, we have to take best practices. Each one teach one, iron sharpeneth iron. It speaks to a very high level of maturity to be able to monitor within. So you would have your own academia, have your own institutions to monitor your processes also. But then when you have international observers coming in, you're able to export that. You're able to teach us how to also monitor our processes. And when the international observers come to our country and they see that we're doing things in a particular way, they learn that also and hopefully use that within their processes to better enhance or make their processes even better. So it's a win-win situation for all countries in that you develop from within, and persons who come in to watch, to learn, to observe, monitor, they learn from that, take that to their various countries. I guess you can liken that to cricket in itself. So we would have observed initially the way that this game was being played. We mastered it. And then it was further transformed and, for want of a better term, changed and sort of taken away from us and brought back in a different format. And by that I mean changing of rules and so on and so forth, so that our game would not necessarily be at the pinnacle and remain at the pinnacle based on the way we would have adapted and adapted to the game, so which is a good thing. So I guess overall, having the international community being here is that it allows for that exchange, that free exchange of ideas, best practices. What works well for me may not work well for you, but you're able to adapt it. So I think from that perspective, it's a learning process.
So, Chairman Hughes, you've said quite a lot about what you observed here. Give me a summary of I don't know, your final statement on, final in the sense, the codified statement on how you view the preparations and the conduct of the elections.
Well, I'll be careful with that word codified. That was used throughout the campaign. But in any event, though, I thought that let's look at the campaigns first, based on what we observed. I thought that the campaigns were very structured. They were engineered in a way to ensure that you exploited, at least for the opposition, that you exploited the various challenges or the cracks, not crooks, but cracks within crevices within the institutions. And you continue to highlight them. Oftentimes it's not what is being said, but who says it. And so if you continue to say that particular situation continues to prove a challenge, and you say it over and over and over, then people believe that what is the case, then you would have achieved your goal. So from that perspective, I think the campaign from that perspective was a good, it appeared to be a very good strategy. I also thought that campaign financing, because that really was brought up by many of the stakeholders that we met with, and who are you invested with? We have to also remember that in a free trade society, but can we get regulations in place so that the smaller parties are then able to participate and get their ideas across to the populace, utilizing social media, utilizing the various platforms, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I may be calling some old ones because it is Bookface, Facebook. All of these things, the smaller parties use that, and then they're able to reach a particular audience. But in a society like this, where print media, where radio, where television still, in my opinion, plays a major role, how do they then get their message across in that medium? In terms of the EBC, I thought they did an excellent job in terms of the way they managed the process, albeit within the time frame that they had to do it within. But I thought they did really well. You are going to have challenges, and I thought those challenges were surmounted, as noticed, as observed by our team. And as I said, I give the EBC a real passing grade, a high passing grade. I give them an A. I thought they did really well considering the pressures that they were under. The poll workers, we went to some of the polling stations. Some were small, some were large, some had AC, some were had their challenges. But people worked, and they worked together, and they brought their baskets, they brought their drinks, and they were sharing among each other. So what we would see on the platform in the public space does not translate to what you experience when you are on the ground. And I think that speaks well. That goes well for the electorate and for the people.
So Chairman Hughes, you would say that the team was satisfied that the election was conducted freely and fairly.
I am satisfied, and our team is satisfied, and that will be part of our report. Yes, there are one or two small areas that we would bring to the attention of the EBC in terms of, the register. I mean, some of these registers are huge, so it's a matter of, better organizing so that the poll clerks are able to find names quicker, and educating the public to check for their names beforehand, that sort of interaction. at the close of poll and at the opening of poll, I thought that really went well. I sat right through in the polling station where I ended 133,602 in Barataria, Taiwan. That at the Barataria Secondary School.
You do well with those names, man.
And the presiding officer was Sonia Greenwich. I remember Sonia because that's my mother's name, and Greenwich because I was a former West Indies cricketer. So, but they did really well considering the time.
Just to give you the local pronunciation of Taiwan.
Sawa.
We call it Sawa.
Sawa. Here you go, Sawa. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Shirley.
You're welcome, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting there, Tony.
Yes, and indicating quite clearly that the mission, that's the CARICOM mission, has been completely satisfied that the elections were conducted in a fair and free manner and efficient manner by the Elections and Boundaries Commission. So all of the chat that went on before it and the allegations made and so on, no evidence was found of those to substantiate those allegations. And it's important, as he said, that we show the world
Yes.
Trinidad and Tobago.
You know, the things that he identified there, the way how it reminds me of, as David Rudder said, how we vote is not how we party.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so all that was taking place on the platform and people going back and that sort of thing. I think Trinidad and Tobago, we are very unique when, you know, the way how things play off on election day. I'm sure the police hardly had any work to do because people are of different parties going to vote, no intimidation, nobody wanting to fight nobody, nothing like that. It's
yeah, very, very important. So that was the chairman of the CARICOM Commission as he spoke yesterday at a news conference talking about the findings of the commission, and a full report is going to be delivered to the government, to the EBC, to the opposition on the conduct and what they found about the conduct of the election. And now we have the chairman of the other mission, that's a Commonwealth mission. And for those who may not know, Trinidad and Tobago has been a member of the Commonwealth, which includes 50 plus countries, all of them former British colonies, and they have been joined together in the Commonwealth. And so, and the Commonwealth, just again to remind our listeners, consists of a whole range of countries, from Caribbean countries, tiny islands in the Caribbean, to Guyana, to large countries like India, Canada, the New Zealand, and of course England, and the British royalty being the head of the Commonwealth. So we had the Commonwealth team here, and the chairman of that commission, Professor Bartolo, he is from the island of an island out in the Pacific area called Malta, and he talked about a specific thing in terms of the preparation for election, and that is called campaign financing, meaning how the parties raise the kinds of monies that are required to conduct a campaign. And as we've seen here in Trinidad and Tobago for a long time, and as we see, for instance, in the United States, campaigns cost hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps billions of dollars in a country like the United States. And he talked about the importance of how those parties are funded in terms of their campaigns and what that can mean for democracy. So let's go to Professor Bartolo. He's the chairman of the Commonwealth mission of observers to the Trinidad and Tobago election.
The chairman of the observer mission from the Commonwealth. Sorry, I don't know your name, so you can tell our listeners your name.
Everybody? Bartolo.
From Bartolo.
Bartolo from you.
You must know that Bartolo is not overly popular a name in Trinidad, but it exists amongst us. So maybe some of our people came from your part of the world. Chairman, I was particularly concerned, concerned is perhaps not the right word, but interested is a far better word, in your statement with regard to campaign financing. And why? Because it's an issue that has been going on in this country and indeed other parts of the Caribbean for 40, perhaps more than 40 years. And politicians pay lip service to it, but they do not implement, they have not implemented legislation in Trinidad and Tobago to deal with it. How important an issue is it to be concerned about in the country?
Very much so. And I tell you, but not by way of consolation, that what you say about the Caribbean not taking it seriously for the last 40 years, I can tell you the rest of the world has not taken it seriously for the rest of the world. We have allowed democracy to deteriorate into a plutocracy, into rule by money, either directly or indirectly. And that is how we destroy democracy. And that is why people all over the world are losing trust in democracy. Because when you have political parties, instead of being financed by public funds coming from the taxes of citizens or coming from the wealth created by that country, the money then comes from private donors. Once the parties start accepting money from private donors, they are caught between two kinds of pressure, two kinds of forces. On one hand, they have to serve their voters who have voted for them. On the other hand, they have to serve their donors who have given them the money to conduct very expensive political campaigns. That is not only playing with fire, that is burning democracy. And that is why we must do all we can in every country, wherever we are, and wherever there is parliamentary democracy, to save democracy from this.
Did you raise it with the political parties and the leaders, the political leaders that you had discussions with? And what were their responses? Did you get a sense that they are really committed, interested?
I must say that I don't think so, no. I don't think they are really committed, and I can tell you why. Because when we talk to the political parties, first of all, it's interesting that it was not an issue that they mentioned themselves. They did not volunteer to discuss campaign financing. They were ready to discuss voter suppression, they were ready to discuss intimidation, they were ready to discuss, using the state media for the party of government, but none of them mentioned party financing of the major parties, I'm saying, because it was interesting that some independents and some small parties did say that was an issue, because obviously they are at a disadvantage. When we spoke to the major parties about it, all they could tell us was, and it was very weak, all they could tell us was, 5 years ago, we started discussing it in Parliament, we have a joint committee, so this is both the responsibility of the government and the opposition. So that is why we must, as citizens, put pressure on the political parties to address this issue.
So when we talk about the big political parties here in Trinidad and Tobago, and they have sufficient, you just have to look at their campaigns and see the kinds of money. I heard a figure of $40 million. I don't know what the real figure is. What of the smaller parties? Is it impacting on democracy and the development of political parties and fairness and democracies, and the small parties do not have the kind of financing that is required to conduct a decent campaign?
They are very much at a disadvantage. And this is how the influence of money not only corrupts, but corrodes and destroys democracy. Let us remember what democracy is all about. It's all about one person, one vote. Once you bring in the money factor, it stops being one money, one vote. It becomes I have more money than you, so I count more than you. And it is so sad. And it is so sad. You know much more than I do that this year is your 100 years since the first election was held. I went to check what happened in 1925, and I found out that only 6% of your people could vote. You had to be over 21 if you were a man. You had to be over 30 if you were a woman, as if being a woman is something less than being a man. You had to have property. You had to have income. What did that mean? That 6% only had their issues addressed in politics. 94% were not like that. Now, take that to campaign financing. When you bring in donors in democracies, you are going back to as if you have property and money qualifications for the influence in democratic politics. The more money you have, the more influence you have.
So in a way, you've gone back to 1925.
But that's why we need, and this is, I repeat, this is a problem everywhere. We were so happy in the last, I would say, 150 years all over the world that we moved towards universal franchise, one person, one vote. It's not anymore whether you have money, it's not anymore whether you have property, so that we all have an equitable, level playing field. Once you bring in the issue of money again, you're taking away equality from democracy.
Okay, Chairman of the Commonwealth Observer Mission to Trinidad and Tobago elections, I'm sure that you're Professor Bartolo.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for talking with us. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Charlo. So that's the first part of our program, and I am sure that you think it important also the point that he made about the democracy being stolen, being shifted away from the average voter. You know, you and I have one vote. The people who contribute to the campaigns of the political parties, they have one vote just like us, but they have many votes after the party is elected to government, because they can throw their weight around in terms of well, the political party owes them something, and therefore they have choices that they make. As he says, the right to vote, the franchise, has been stolen away in many ways because of the contribution of the business community in their contribution to putting a party in office and thereafter benefiting from it. A very important thing, and as he noted, and as I am aware of, campaign finance reform is a discussion that has been going on for 40 years plus. The political parties don't shout too loud about it, nor do they intend to implement legislation to ensure that it is not a way of saying that the business community should not and cannot contribute to the political parties and their campaigns, but it must be made public, transparent, so that people can make judgments, and there should be stipulations about the quantity that can be contributed to a political party, and what do the business community, the people in the business community who make the contributions, what do they expect to get out of their investment, as it were, in the political parties. A very important thing there, Charlo.
It is. And when it comes to like the campaign financing, looking as you draw the reference to what happens in the U.S., is it much different as to how things are? I mean, because like I am sure there is some difference, because you see where the parties go out and they are raising funds, and they are raising huge funds at different rallies and different meetings and that sort of thing. But all these meetings that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago with our rent-a-crowd and that sort of thing, I don't see any of them making any money for the parties.
Yes, you're right, but the big political parties in the U.S. also get massive millions of dollars. An example, Elon Musk made a contribution of over $200 million to the Republican Party, and you see what he got out of it. Yeah, he got to make all kinds of decisions about the political party. But just before we continue with this discussion, let me make our listeners know that the second part of the program, which is going to start in a minute or two, will be about a book that has been published by a Barbadian-born English cricketer called Roland Butcher. I'm sure that he's well known to people who follow the cricket, and we're going to talk to him in a short while on that matter. Yes, Charles, so that going back to the discussion, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars have been contributed to the political parties here, everywhere in the Caribbean, in the United States, in England, everywhere. I see Roland Butcher has joined us. We're just winding up two interviews we had before you, and we're going to come to you in a moment. So, Charles, it's a big thing. And as the chairman of the Commonwealth Commission has made clear, it robs people of the democracy. As I said a moment ago, you and I have one vote.
Yeah.
So too does the chairman of the biggest donor in the country. But subsequent to the election, he has many votes and many interventions to make in the affairs of the nation.
Yeah, very strategic how they do their thing.
Absolutely. It's really an investment by the business community
of course.
In the functioning of the country after the election. They select a party, and it is certain that many of them, they select parties because they are not wedded ideologically or in any emotional way to any of the parties, so that they will give to one party, two parties, three parties, four parties, of course, in gradations as to which one they expect to win so that their investment can pay some big dollars to them. So for the business community, after the election, they play for the PP, which is the party in power. Whichever party wins, they have no real emotional or ideological, engagement with those parties. They're simply looking to peddle influence after the election. Yes?
No emotional ties at all. That is it.
No. It's only small people who would die for their party. As a PNM till are dead, as a UNC till are dead, that kind of foolishness.
Yeah.
They are looking
and you're dead and
returns on their investment.
And you're dead and broken.
Yes, so we have the second part of the program this afternoon. As I indicated, we have a man here who has spent a large chunk of his life in England, and I'm sure it's no different in England than it is in Barbados, originally from Barbados. The man's name, I am sure that people in touch with cricket in Trinidad and Tobago and elsewhere in the Caribbean, and indeed elsewhere in the cricketing world where this program can be heard, they are familiar with the name Roland Butcher. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, and great to be here.
Okay. And I am sure that you are fully aware of what we are talking about party campaign financing. Goes on in England, goes on in Barbados, everywhere, yes?
Very much so. I mean, that's why the acronym ROI is there.
Yeah.
Return on investment.
Right. But I don't want to get you involved in that kind of politics. Roland Butcher left Barbados, and I'm reading from something that he sent me with regard to the introduction to his book. He launched this book yesterday at the Queen's Park Oval. I had an invitation to go, but I was deeply involved in the politics yesterday, reporting on the election, etc., etc. So today we have him to talk about his book. Again, reading from the introduction, Roland Butcher is a distinguished former cricketer who made history as the first black man to play Test cricket for England. He was born in Barbados. He went on to represent Middlesex and England as a stylish and talented batsman, retiring from first-class cricket 1990. Following his career, he did coaching at several institutions, schools, and at the highest level of the game. And he returned to Barbados in his native country in 2004. And subsequent to that, he has been involved in all kinds of organization and administration of the cricket. And if you listen to international cricket, he's one of the commentators on the game. So, Roland, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, were you? I can't remember seeing you play, but were you strong on the back foot or the front foot?
I would say I was really a back foot player, and that
Okay.
really would have come about because of my upbringing in Barbados.
Right.
I didn't go to England until I was 13 and a half. So by that time, I would have played a lot of street cricket, etc.
Right. Well, I asked that because I intend to put you on the back foot to start with. Like the great Barbadian players on the hard wickets, Garfield Sobers, Clyde Walcott, who would hook you off your nose, etc., etc. So I want to put you on the back foot and see how well you play the bouncers coming up to your chin. By saying that, I give you my first impression of you when I heard. I've been following cricket all my life, really. And when I heard of you playing for England, I was disappointed. So I'm saying that to put you on your back foot, to hook your way out of it. Yeah, I said, how does a major man gone to England and play cricket for the enemy, the arch enemy that is? And so why? Tell listeners why you did this.
Well, it was a very simple choice, really. Obviously, having grown up in Barbados, like any young Barbadian or any young West Indian who's interested in cricket, you want to play for the West Indies. So as a boy, I dreamed of playing international cricket. So at that time, I didn't know anything about England or anywhere else. So obviously, West Indies would have been what I had in mind. But when I was 13 and a half, my parents, who had been in England some many years, 12, 13 years before that, wanted me to come to England. So having gone to England and developed in England, I got the opportunity, obviously, to be considered for international cricket. Now, the decision was quite simple because while I was in England, obviously I was playing as a home-based player, which meant that I could play with any county in England. Now, if I chose to play for the West Indies, what that would have done is that would have made me an overseas player. And in those days, the counties were each county was only allowed 2 overseas players. Now, Middlesex already had 2 overseas players. So if I chose to play for West Indies and become an overseas player, I would have been out of work. I had just been recently married, had a family, and it would have been madness, really, to have put my family in that position where I could be unemployed. So it became very, very simple that by playing for England, it meant that I remained a home player. And even if I left Middlesex, I could join any county in England without having to qualify or whatever.
Okay, so you passed the first test. You made a few runs there. I ask it because I am sure, as you have indicated, the circumstances which got you in England and got you to play for England would have been interesting to find out how and why. The most recent Barbadian export, of course, we know he had difficulties with selection and tralala, and he explained that going forward. So now in England, how was life like to get into playing cricket with Middlesex, one of the big teams of the period, and continuing to be so. I think our own Larry Gomes played for Middlesex for some time. And
That's
so
correct.
too Desmond Haynes, right?
Yes, that's
They
correct.
play 2 or 4. So it's a tradition of cricketers from the West Indies playing for teams in England. And in fact, for our listeners would know that going back to from the 1930s right up to the 50s and 60s, a lot of the great players of the West Indies went to play league cricket, which is different from the county cricket, which is at a higher level, etc., etc. So, what was your experience in, first of all, well, you must have played cricket in Barbados before, but getting up to the kind of test standard that is required for you to represent a team like England, what was the experience like?
Yes, I think before I answer the question about the experience, I would also like to add also that Wayne Daniel was a Middlesex player for over 10 years as a fast bowler. To rise into that position where I got the opportunity to play for England, I'd played only basic cricket in Barbados, mainly amongst ourselves, informal cricket in the streets, a little bit of primary school cricket, but that was basically it. So England, the development really came through the opportunity to play in some club cricket. Started in the third 11, developed quite quickly into the second 11, first 11. By 15, I was playing in the club first 11. Then, I had some luck in that one of the players that the club I played for moved to Gloucestershire County Cricket Club to work for the county as a fundraiser. Spoke to the club about myself as a young player they should look at, and they invited me to Gloucestershire for trials, which I did. They liked what they saw. I played 2 summers during the holidays for Gloucestershire as a youth player. Then they sent me up to Lords, to the MCC, where I had a trial with the MCC. At that time, the MCC had a program where it was an apprenticeship program. So they liked what they saw at the MCC, and they signed me on for 2 years. So really those 2 years was when you really learn how to become, because the next step is professional cricket. So it's an apprenticeship on how to be a first-class cricketer. I was there at the same time. Ian Bothan and myself were at the MCC together. And in later years, people like Darren Sammy also became an MCC apprentice. So it was a place that you learn what next step was going to be. Again, fortunate for me being based at Lords with the MCC, Middlesex got the opportunity to cast an eye over all the young players. In me, they liked what they saw, offered me a contract. I joined them in 1972 and remained there till 1990. And in that process, also got selected for England. So that really was my pathway into the England side.
Right. So how difficult was it, or perhaps it wasn't, for you, as you've described yourself, the first black man to play for England? Of course, we discount the Indians who played for England back at the turn of into the 20th century, a man called Ranjit Singh, who must have been a genius playing down the leg side. But that's another story. Basil de Oliveira, I remember when he came here in 1966 with the England team, and I hustled to the nets to see de Oliveira, see him play and all of that. And of course, in the Caribbean, he would be described as a white man. But for the South Africans, that was a different story. But that apart, how, talking about being the first black man, how difficult was it to get accepted? The usual thing is that if you are black, you have to be super compared to the competition. How difficult or easy was it for you to make an impression on the selectors?
Well, Listen, I've always believed that the best way to get into a team is to perform and perform well. I've always believed that. Yes, in a place like England, you have to perform better than your counterparts. But there were others before me who obviously tried to make that step. I really got myself into a situation where in 1980 I was in a rich vein of form. Reeled off some very big scores. I was quite consistent, match winning innings as well, and basically, caught the eye of the selectors. I think it also helped at the time that Ian Botham was captain of England, and as I said, we were apprentices together. So he would have had a big influence as well. But I think basically my performances in 1980 was what really got me in that position.
Mm-hmm. I just remembered is that a countryman of yours played in that particular time, but he played for the West Indies. John Shepherd, I think about. He was in that kind of contemporary era with you, wasn't he?
Yes. But yeah, he played. John was playing at that time, and I played a lot against John. And I mean, actually, my debut year was Gary Sober's last year in county cricket, so I played against Gary Sober's. In 1974, but John always played as an overseas player while he was in those days, till obviously he qualified later on to be an English player. But he
played for Kent, if I remember correctly.
He played for Kent, yeah.
Right, and he played a few Test matches for the West Indies.
Yes, and he did pretty well too for the West Indies.
Yeah. What is he doing? Is he around? Are you aware of his what he's doing?
Well, he spent a lot of time on the golf course and watching cricket in the summer. Okay. That's what he does now. He just enjoy the rest of his life.
Right. Wonderful. So, you one of the chapters in the book. And I have them here listed, and you send them for me. One of the chapters talk about dealing with racial discrimination, which must have been very prevalent at the time, probably still prevalent at the moment. And one of the chapters talked about it. The move to England, the breaking into Middlesex, becoming the first black man, etc., etc. How was that for you? Was it a deterrence? Did you have to cross some hurdles to get into the England team?
Yeah, listen, in the 80s, obviously tensions were very high in England. There were lots of riots at that time. There were Brixton riots and other riots, which were all racially motivated. I was fairly lucky that I was pretty much kept out of a lot of that. Initially, when I went to England, my parents lived in a place called Stevenage in Hertfordshire, which was a new town. My father was actually the first black man to live in Stevenage. So I was fortunate that I guess we lived in that area, and we were not considered a threat because there were not many black folk. So that was my initial upbringing. I guess another thing also was I did not really understand the whole racial situation because, coming from Barbados, I had never experienced any racism because as a kid, you just did not really interact with white people. I mean, most of us came from, the plantation type families, and that's where I came. I was brought up with my grandmother who worked on the plantation. She worked in the field loading cane and
All right, everybody, and of course that was just to give you a little snippet of what happened last evening on the Drive Time Exchange with Tony Fraser. Really interesting stuff, and that is why you need to come up in the afternoon between 4 and 6 p.m. to experience the Drive Time Exchange. Of course, if you want to get the entire show from yesterday, you can go check out our YouTube channel at New Era TT Radio. Yeah, when you get up there, like and subscribe to the channel so so you would know when things are happening. All right, and yeah, and you'll be able to listen to all of our programs there, ones that you would have missed and that sort of thing. Right, all of those programs are there waiting on you. All right. So from here on in, we jump inside of the mid-morning mix and mingle.
This is the original lover. Or me sing, well.